Hey everyone, welcome back to a new series, Foulborn Roulette. A wheel of fortune with Foulborn items. Spin it, maybe win it, you'll see. I think you'll enjoy this one though, so let's dive in. Let me explain the concept and set some expectations. As an SSF player, I found a good number of Foulborn uniques. This was recorded before the last patch, by the way. I picked 10 Foulborn uniques I feel were interesting, put the pictures of the uniques on a wheel and I spin it. I land on, without sound apparently, Xof's Nurture version 2. All these items on the wheel correspond with this stash tab, and Xof's Nurture 2 is this Foulborn unique, a bow where skills are supported by level 30 Immolate. In terms of setting expectations, I feel I didn't land on a revolutionary build by any means. Not that it was the goal, but still. I made it pretty far though, I will say. I do feel what is interesting to show, and what you actually seem to like, is the journey how I got to the end result. And if you enjoy that type of SSF Path of Exile content, consider subscribing for more. Let's break down this Foulborn Xof's nature. It comes in two versions, or at least I have two versions. This one with the level 30 Immolate and another with guaranteed ignites. The bow has okay physical damage and it converts 50% of physical damage to fire damage. The attack speed is quite low, however. It's got a small chance to ignite. I recover 51 life whenever I do ignite, which ends up to be surprisingly useful when mapping. And then there is the Foulborn affix. In case you're wondering, because I was wondering, how big is that level 30 Immolate? Well, let me tell you, or better, let the wiki tell you. Immolate, first of all, is flat fire damage, but it only does so against burning enemies, so I need to ignite enemies or this whole thing doesn't work. That's why the 10% ignite chance is kinda nice. Level 30 of this support gem adds no less than 501 to 752 flat fire damage, which I feel is a lot. All the flat physical damage from the bow gets added to this, assuming you convert all fists to fire, which I do, resulting in around a 600 to 1200 flat fire damage bow, and taking the average of that and multiplying it by the attack speed, that would give me 1125 fire DPS against burning enemies. I'm not great at DPS numbers on weapons, but that seems okay. I think what is important to realize is that there is no other elemental damage present on the bow, making proccing something like Trinity a lot harder. The first question is, which Ascendancy do I play? Well, you could look at the thumbnail and you would know I decided on a Chieftain. I guess the obvious options are Elementalist, Deadeye, or maybe even Champion, but I think as we have a very fire-themed bow, the Chieftain could be interesting. And if you're wondering, then yes, this is really as much thought as I'm putting into choosing an Ascendancy. The leveling, while I do have some B-roll recorded, is of no real value here. I just try to make it within a reasonable time out of the campaign so we can mess around with the bow. Once I'm out, I'm level 71, I have 3 Ascendancies, which by the way will never change. I got some Twink gear, some Tree gear, and that's about it. I did run one map and even found a high fortress, which I managed to complete, but again, it is with Rain of Arrows and I don't intend to use that. In terms of skill options, I think there are two main routes to take. There is the ignite-based round, where this massive flat fire damage creates ignites, which you can proliferate, and using Hinekora, you will create the occasional explosion for even more ignites. I'm not sure how well the Immolate synergizes with that, but I imagine it should work quite well, and given the idea is to make a mapper, I am very tempted to do this. The second route is an on-hit route, just scaling the flat fire damage. I still need to ignite or Immolate won't do anything, but all other damage is just flat damage. No matter which route I take, I think there are two main delivery methods that I could pick. First, self-cast or self-shoot, I guess, or option 2, totems. There are a good number of totem nodes around as well, it could be a very comfy playstyle. Last but not least, I will definitely try out a few of the new skills to see if they work in any way. I am undecided for now on a skill, but I will make you guys part of all the testing. The rest of this video will be in chronological order as you see me suffer or progress depending on your perspective through the various setups. I've recorded most of it, so let's go. I start out with creating a bit of gear to get started on my main character. Some is coming from map runners as well. I craft a bit and all of it goes into a single stash tab for later use. I'm starting with 2 5-links and I'm checking the vendor for ignite skills. I first try out conflagration because it's new. For single targets I have artillery ballistae. This is an on-hit setup, so there's no ignite scaling. I won't get into all support gems every time, by the way. I'm running Herald of Ash, Purity of Fire and Haste. My max res is 82% and I get a few grafts. I'm currently running around with 0 grafts, so anything is an upgrade. Covered in Ash seems fine, the other one as well, and here you see conflagration in action. It is supported by faster attacks, LMP, and I'm sure something like elemental damage with attacks. What I don't like about the skill is that you have to move over to the arrows for them to explode. Here is a bit of mapping action, a tier 3 map. It works, I suppose, but if you look at the footage, the main reason stuff is dying is because of my Hinakora's explosions, but not necessarily because of conflagration. It's decent as a delivery method for ignites, so my immolate procs, but I think the added damage effectiveness is simply too low to make a proper use of it. Having to stand on rare enemies to trigger conflagration also seems anti-synergistic for a bow character. Some of these insights, by the way, I realized when writing the script, but I still try to provide my thought process as accurately as possible that I had at the time. Attempt number 2, on-hit burning arrow, is because I feel I should in theory be able to do a lot of flat damage with this bow. Burning arrow therefore seems a decent candidate, supported by lesser multiple projectiles, mirage archer and 2 more things. And as you can see, it does pretty well. There are some ignites going on, although I'm not scaling ignite here really. I still have artillery ballistae for support. My main gripe here is the low base attack speed of burning arrow, 70% of base, and my bow is already slow, so it doesn't feel great to play. In terms of damage though and proccing Hinakoras, it's not bad. I make some adjustments by putting conflagration and ignite prolif on a mana forged arrow setup to hopefully guarantee ignites for the immolate. I get mark on hit alchemist mark as well. I try out point blank as I'm on top of enemies more often than I should be. I then decide to try out a bit of new tech that I thought of thanks to my new Foulborn uniques. Self-ignite. This won't hurt me because I'm unaffected by ignites as a chieftain. I looked at the ignite page on the wiki listing all of the uniques and there is this amulet that applies fire damage to you when you are igniting an enemy. It's called the Eye of Innocence. Combine this with 2 Foulborn Moku's embraces and there is some interesting synergy going on. When I get ignited by igniting enemies, I gain 25 to 40% increased attack speed, plus increased cast speed as well, similar amounts, which would be amazing. And that is per ring. Plus there's more synergy because the Foulborn affix plus 3 max fire res will also apply to max cold and lightning res, again thanks to my Ascendancy. I slot in a new belt with life and res, craft on that, and here is the self-ignite in action, using the same burning arrow setup. I mean, it works, and I can feel the increased attack speed. This is like 70% increased attack speed when I'm ignited. It still feels fairly clunky, however, a burning arrow, but I'm glad the tech at least seems to work. I think smarter content creators than me can think of, or have done so in the past, how to make better use of this. I'm a bit of a noob explorer in terms of build making, so I'm happy about the little things. It's time for another attempt, after I 6-link my bow using 1500 fusings. I'm not in the mood for gambling. I decided that maybe the immolate on a ballista would work, at least it should according to the gem. So I get artillery ballista with fire pen, faster attacks, LE damage with attacks, added fire damage, which is questionable, and I believe faster projectiles or something. I still have the conflagration mana forged and I get a second mana forged burning arrow for applying some debuffs such as combustion. In a tier 3 map this works well enough. It feels good to just drop ballistae and I only have 4 of them at the moment. Single target damage though is not so great as you would expect, despite this being on a 7-link with immolate. Again, the low added damage effectiveness may be an issue here. Also mana sustain is a bit of an issue, but my main skill has to cost mana, or the mana forged setups won't work. That said, it's the best version I've tried so far and it's time to improve it. And what better way to improve totem builds than by using the classic unique for that, Wilma's Requital. It adds Ancestral Bond, meaning I don't do damage anymore, and totems now scale off both cast and attack speed. That should be completely broken on those Moku rings. I decided to fix mana with an Arrogance Clarity setup and put in Precision too for good measure. It allows me to unspec Resolute Technique, which I've been running until this point. I also automate Steel Skin for bleed immunity and a bit of a shield. I get Mana Force setup with Frenzy and Blind on the chest, pick some totem nodes to get more Ballista out, and I roll another map. It's tier 5 this time. And it works very well actually on a tier 5 map. I have 6 totems, I'm still self-igniting, meaning I get absolutely massive amounts of attack speed, which you can tell I feel as well in the gameplay. Because I have unwavering stance, I don't evade a single attack, and whenever I get hit I get ignited, triggering the tech. This is fine in a tier 5 map, getting hit all the time. In a tier 16 map, however, I cannot survive this. The main issue I introduced with Wilma's is that I don't do damage anymore, meaning, I feel at least, the amulet doesn't work anymore. And to me, that is what it feels like at this moment. I bump up the build a little further with a Skirmish, which is another totem. Here is all of that in action in a high fortress, which I do not survive, kinda highlighting the issue with getting hit by every single attack. I clearly can't block or mitigate that except for armor, so this is a problem. Here is that issue again in a tier 9 map, it's just not sustainable. I know I have a 2k life, but still. I do feel, however, that on a tanky chieftain build, 2 of these rings can be a lot of fun. I don't think you need this amulet if you actually have decent defenses, because you will get ignited when you're hit, but I lack decent defenses. I take it further though, as I am pathing all the way to this node. This tree is very stretched out at the moment. I do, however, need dexterity, so it doesn't feel all that bad to do all the pathing. I throw in an Arcanist brand setup, normally a bad idea with no cast speed, but when ignited, I have 75% cast speed. I need some more accuracy, so I anoint that, but ultimately, I do get rid of this attempt. There's another skill, it is basically Rain of Arrows, but with fire. Blast Rain. Seems to fit in the theme, right? It's mostly the same support gems, this is all still on hit, plus a Mirage Archer. Well, to cut a long story short, here is the single target damage in a tier 10 map. The only thing that does damage here is the Hinakoras. It's a recurring theme. Clear speed is okay-ish, but yeah, this is not good. It suffers from very low added damage effectiveness, another recurring theme. It's time for something else. Ignite-based stuff. Self-shoot Ignite Burning Arrow. I theorize a bit of a setup using Burning Arrow, figure out if fire penetration impacts Ignite, which apparently it doesn't, check the wiki what else does skill Ignite, and decide on Burning Arrow, Burning Support, LMP, Swift Affliction, Efficacy, and Ignite Proliferation. It's probably not the best, I know, but I just want to see what Ignite roughly would do. I get a bunch of Ignite and damage over time on the tree, and let's do a test run. In Delve this time, where I see if I can just stand there and face tank. I can't. I get a 6 link from the tree, and I use that for the Mana Force Frenzy setup. I get some more resistances, I reserve way too much life, but okay. I get some implicits on gear. My gear is still pretty scuffed, by the way, it is just not the focus at the moment. I realize Burning Arrow quality gives more ignite damage, so I fix that. Decide I want Artillery Ballistae as support instead of Mana Force Frenzy. It is mostly a damage artillery with combustion, not sure that even makes sense, but okay. I get some more defenses using Flesh and Stone, Sand Stance, Petrified Blood, and the Foulborn Red Dream, which gives some extra life. The Arcanist brand is gone. I now automate Blood Rage and Molten Shell in the helmet. I try out the Rune Graft of Refraction for Burning Arrow, just firing one projectile which then shoots Chain and Fork. In my mind, that's a great idea, so I allocate a useless mastery on the tree, slot that Rune Graft in, roll a tier 13 map, and here's how that looks. It's fucking horrible is how that looks. Now, I do pierce, which is a mistake, but having to aim a skill is so 2012. This is not good at all. The damage is decent, I suppose, although again, it's Hinakora's explosions that steal the show, it's definitely not me. However, those don't proc on single target, and when I found myself unable to kill the map boss, I gave up on the map. I got rid of the pierce, which makes the Rune Graft a lot more efficient, but it doesn't get around the fact that I need to aim. I mean, it's a tier 16 map. I am not completely unhappy with what I'm seeing here, but I am fairly unhappy still. I'm like 3 out of 10 happy at this point. I use a Blanching Omen on the bow, hit 3 whites, which I assume is pretty rare, and then I just make a 4th one white 2 to make sure to remove most color. Donald would love this bow. It makes experimenting a bit easier, and what else am I gonna do with the Hordy stuff? If not waste it on characters I would never use again. And again, here you can tell the power of Hinocor's explosions. Without it, damage is pretty bad. With it, Vroon dies fast. I use Path of Building to theory craft a bit of a new skill tree. No more Ignite, but now I am using all the knowledge I gained from the previous attempts to see if I can scale on hit better. I have a few million gold, so I can respec to my heart's content. It is back to Artillery Ballista, baby. I really love this skill. I'm not a huge fan of pronouncing it, but okay. On hit, so that means elemental damage with attacks, concentrated effect, slower projectiles for more damage, fire penetration and combustion, just stacking more multipliers. The Mana-Forged support setup is Burning Arrow, which also ignites, prolifes and combusts. Here's the whole thing in action. It's a lot tankier than it seems actually, this build. The occasional one-shot happens, but I leech fire damage, which is why I'm constantly topping up. Damage output is reasonable, I feel, and playing totems just feels so much better than self-shoot. The bow attack time doesn't matter in terms of quality of life anymore. Totem speed is very quick. I still self-ignite because my Mana-Forged setup hits enemies, ignites enemies, and that ignites me. This is by far the best version of the build so far, and I'm overall quite pleased with this. I have been using Tanuani for a while for speed, violence, and of course momentum. But now is the time to actually use my brain and craft fire exposure on gloves. Here is another test run. You can tell everyone, including myself, is ignited, so the level 30 immolate on the bow should be in effect. Gems are still leveling, but you know, the build is shaping up to be, well, something, I guess. I'm aware, of course, that all of this pales in comparison to pretty much any other bow build. And there's gonna be someone in the comment section telling me that I should play a Deadeye. Yes, I think at least 3 other Ascendancies would be more optimal in terms of choice, but I enjoy this process of just trying to make the best out of a constrained situation, in this case the Xolf's Nurture and the Chieftain. And within that context, I do feel I'm getting somewhere. But is it enough? I don't know. Here is another idea, a Replica's Alpha's Howl for mana reservation. I craft it, put some gems in there including Herald of Ash for more explosions, seems fun. I lose the Petrified Blood, I enable Purity of Fire, and in the next map I have 90% all res. I also have a bit more life to work with. This map again is quite smooth, until you try to kill the map boss, which is the moment you realize you should instead kill something else, as this ain't happening anytime soon. For more damage, I try out Arn's Anguish, which works. I have 7 brutal charges here, however now I have even less defenses. The build does fairly well in hives. However, if I wanted to just stand still for 24 waves and watch a YouTube video while holding Q, I would have to play my SRS Guardian instead. Because on this guy, I die. I then try the bosses and single target damage is simply atrocious. This is just pathetic, which is the main reason I decided to not stick with this attempt. I still feel after all the testing that with Chieftain, Ignite is the way to go, so I swap again. I craft a Path of Building. I set up the classic explosive arrow with Ballista totem support because I do like my totems instead of self-shoot. I get Ignite support gems including Prolif, Swift Affliction, Efficacy. I get the Malevolence aura, put that with Haste, Precision and Purity of Fire in a regular Alpha's Howl for the +2 aura. I can't run Purity of Fire however, so I guess I'm not doing that. 86% all res is still fine, right? I respec once more into full ignite / damage over time, take out my Rain of Splinters, which I looted on the main character. That thing is super rare, so don't try this at home. It's got +2 projectiles though, 40% reduced damage, that's a steal. Here's the test. It completely fails, but it turns out testing level 1 gems in a tier 16 map with Delirium may not be the smartest idea. I level up those gems a little bit, run a Jungle Valley, and I mean, it works, for the most part. EA Ballista is of course a classic, not on the Chieftain by the way. You play this on Elementalist or Champion I believe. Belstron's got a great guide on it, I played this back in the day. The idea is to get 20 fusings into an enemy, make those explode for a massive ignite and then prolift that ignite. I am clearly not doing anything like that over here. I only have 4 totems. I do have a massive amount of attack speed, so that should help, but not as much as Belstron's build, which makes use of the Wilmas, which I can't do. The build is popping off though, in its own way. And sure, I have a shrine here, but you will notice a bunch of screens exploding. This is very satisfying. Until you inevitably get one shot, of course. I played this for a while, thinking I may have found what used to be the meta, ironically, in my quest to make a Foulborn unique work. And while I really like the playstyle and the Ignite Proliv and the totems, I feel using Explosive Arrow with only getting a few fusings in just doesn't pan out all that well. It is a valiant attempt, but these are not the Ignites I'm looking for. I do like the blue explosions, it's one of the first MTX I ever bought back in the day. It is time for another attempt. Back to basic, back to Burning Arrow. I'm combining the best of all previous attempts here, I feel. I go with Ignite, because the Ignite proliferation in mapping and hives is just unmatched. One Hinakora's explosion and the dopamine is firing. I stick to totems because not having to aim and only relying on some totem placement speed for quality of life just feels pretty good. As I don't need to hit all that much to apply a decent Ignite, there is also no need for 6 or even 8 totems. It won't add all that much, I feel. 4 is more than enough. They don't need to fire fast either, they just need to apply the occasional Ignite so it can prolive. That also allows me to focus on a lot of damage over time nodes. I don't have a single dot piece on my gear, by the way, at this point. Support gems are mostly the same and the build is still rather squishy. I had to sacrifice defenses to get a bunch of dot damage. At least, that is what the situation was when I ended finishing the script yesterday evening. I went on to farm some more Foulborn uniques, rather unsuccessfully, on my main character, before returning to this late night yesterday and making significant improvement and turning it into a much more balanced build. I reached level 94, used a few divines on the weapon to improve the damage, reached level 95. If a map boss has any adds and they explode, you one-shot the map bosses, which does feel very good. It's fun just walking into an arena and one-tapping the boss. I ultimately realized the self-ignite tech for my current iteration just isn't doing all that much, as I am not self-shoot and my build isn't reliant on cast speed or attack speed. I think the tech is very cool on a melee chieftain, but for this I am much better off with normal jewelry. I improve a bunch of other pieces as well, and here is the final map that I'll be running, and the build is now much more tanky, has actually some life on the life pool, endurance and frenzy charges. I'm quite happy with this ultimately. Another huge advantage I feel is that it's a one button build, and another change I made with the Maniforged Arrow support is that I linked it to Blast Rain of Chartis, which has a guaranteed burn, meaning my weapon's immolate always functions. The Chartis does decent damage as well, by the way, and it looks pretty cool, so I thought it was quite an enjoyable addition to the build. Apart from that, there aren't that many changes, and if you PoB this endgame situation, it will tell you I have 35k EHP without flasks, 50k with flasks, only 600k Ignite DPS, but that doesn't account for Hinakora's explosions. It feels like a few million DPS in maps at least. This build allows me to just zoom around, place some totems, Maniforged Blast Rain, and that's it. I have Val Purity of Fire for some tankiness that I can press, but other than that I don't have to do anything. It's reasonably fast too for a chieftain. I was contemplating logging into the game and doing a full build overview at the end, but the video is already quite long, so instead I have updated the path of building, all my gear and everything from the latest version. You see mapping right there, that's in the PoB. It is fairly optimized all in all, however that is it for now. I hope you enjoyed this Foulborn journey, the Foulborn Roulette, the first episode, even though I didn't make it all that far. I'm going to spin the wheel again, depending a bit on how well this video is doing. So please help me out with that, subscribe, like the video, share it, it really helps. Thanks for watching and making it to the end. Love you all, see you soon, bye bye.